Chair lays out House Bill 366. Recognizes Speaker Phelan to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the Committee on Public Education for keeping my seat warm for me. I think they just left the premises. But again, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 366, which is a necessary step towards ensuring transparency and integrity in political advertising in the state of Texas. The rapid advancement of generative artificial intelligence has made it possible to manipulate images, videos, and audio recordings with an unprecedented level of realism. These technologies have been weaponized to mislead voters, distort reality, and falsely portray candidates and office holders in ways that undermine our democratic process. This bill seeks to ensure that when altered or generated content is used in political advertising, and I repeat, political advertising, voters are informed and aware that what they are seeing or hearing has been artificially manipulated. HB 366 requires political advertisements that include altered images, videos, or audio recordings to disclose that the content did not occur in reality. The Texas Ethics Commission will establish the specific requirements on how these disclosures must appear, ensuring they are consistent with existing election laws and campaign finance regulations. Importantly, the bill also establishes a Class A misdemeanor or penalty for violations, reinforcing the seriousness of misleading the public with generated deception. To be clear, this bill is not about limiting free speech or banning the use of AI in political messaging. Candidates and campaigns can still use such content, but they must be upfront with voters when they do so. If we fail to act, we risk allowing a new generation of deceiving attacks to become the new norm in political discourse, further eroding trust in our elections and our public institutions. That said, I do recognize there are portions of the bill that need further clarification and additional considerations. As we move forward, I'm committed to working with committee members, our constituents, stakeholders, and the Texas Ethics Commission to refine and finalize any necessary improvements to ensure the bill is as effective as possible. Members, I am not an expert on AI. By the way, this is the first bill I've laid out in 4 years, so if I'm a little rusty, work with me. But I'm not an expert in AI. If you told me 18 months ago I'd be having a bill before State Affairs dealing with AI, I would ask you what AI is. But it's the new reality in this world. There are bills being filed that are much larger bills, very omnibus bills dealing with AI across the spectrum, but none of them deal with the political advertising. There are a lot of staffers in this Capitol who operate anonymous Twitter accounts. I'm not coming for your memes. If you like your memes, you can keep your memes. This has nothing to do with X or Facebook or anything on social media. I do have quite a few witnesses, but if it would satisfy the chair, if I may bring up the Texas Ethics Commission as a resource witness to explain what is political advertising and what is not political advertising, and who this involves and who this does not involve. So if I may.
Do you want to start with that?
That'd be great.
Speaker? Okay. Okay. Chair calls James Tinley. Mr. Tinley, I show you as General Counsel for the Texas Ethics Commission. Registered as neutral on the bill. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Yes, James Tinley, I'm General Counsel of the Texas Ethics Commission, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
If you could just remind the panel and the audience, what is political advertising? What triggers the election code? Again, this bill is solely within the election code. It has nothing to do with, again, social media. It has nothing to do with someone posting something funny or not funny on the internet. It has to do with what your commission deals with day in, day out on political speech.
Right, and political advertising is a communication that supports or opposes a candidate for nomination or election to public office. Courts have interpreted that support or oppose to include only the functional equivalent of express advocacy or express advocacy itself. So that would be limited to functional equivalent of express advocacy for people running for an election or nomination to an office.
So if someone posts something on the internet, on Twitter, is that something the Ethics Commission will say, that is express advocacy, and, you know, we need a disclaimer on that meme or picture or whatever that the public may generate?
So, and I should add too, so it's a communication to support or oppose a candidate, essentially, that appears in certain ways. And one of those ways is if it appears on an internet website in the definition. So I think it's possible, right, for certain communications that are expressly advocating, and, you know, it depends what the meme is, right? And I wouldn't target memes in particular, but if a candidate, you know, says, vote for me on their social media, that would be a communication on an internet website that would be express advocacy and could be subject to certain disclosure requirements. The Ethics Commission has a rule that says if it's your Twitter account, you don't need to put a disclosure statement on every tweet that you do.
You're speaking to a candidate, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not the general public.
So, yeah, I mean, there is, the way the law is written, I think maybe if you're going to look at this, I think the definition of political advertising could be addressed as well as a general matter and not specific to your bill, because, you know, it says appears in certain ways. One way in which is a newspaper or broadcast on television for consideration. That is, you're paying the newspaper to carry your ad, not the newspaper's editorial. It's not clear that that same restriction that I'm getting paid to post it, right, applies to communications on the internet website. So I think clarity there. I think if you're looking at ways to make sure the bill is perfectly tailored, that would be something to look at.
Sure. Is your agency looking at this new world of generated media, and is that something y'all talked about, or other states addressing this, to your knowledge?
Many other states are addressing this in other ways, and the federal government as well, even through the FCC, not even specific to elections, just advertising containing this generative AI and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it's definitely being looked at all over in other jurisdictions. And other jurisdictions have passed legislation similar to this.
And I know there's federal laws that are being considered as well. One, I guess, more infamous situation was the South Carolina primary, when a voicemail went out to several 100,000 voters in South Carolina with the voice of Joe Biden. It sounded more like Joe Biden than Joe Biden sounded like at the time. And it told people, do not waste your vote on the primary, otherwise you won't be able to vote in the general election, which was obviously not true. But when 100,000 people plus get that voicemail directly sent to their inbox, it may or may not have an impact on the election. And I recall, if I'm not mistaken, that the two firms that collaborated on that scheme were based here in Texas for that AI-generated voicemail that went out. You know, I personally went through a campaign where there was AI-generated or deep fakes. You know, they took my face and put it on the very svelte, very dapper Rafael Anchia on one mailer. And I told him he wore that linen suit much better than I ever would have worn that linen suit. But it's that type of deception. I think when you run for office, we should want the public to have as much truth as possible. And I don't know why anybody would be in favor of deceptive advertising. And so I know in the private sector, there are folks out there, celebrities and folks who have a presence on social media whose voices and likeness is being altered and being used to push products that they don't endorse. And that's deceptive trade, and that shouldn't be allowed, nor should this be allowed in the politics. So what we're trying to do is keep this within the political advertising world, within the Texas Ethics Commission, and make certain that when these mailers at $20,000 a piece go out, or $25,000 a piece, and they obviously have images that never occurred in reality, that the voters at least know that. There is a bill in the Senate that is much more punitive than this. It was heard last week. Not a peep on that, but it's a felony to do what I'm trying to make a misdemeanor, and it applies to much more than just political advertising. And so that's in the Senate, and they've already had a hearing on that, probably coming over to the House. So we need to get ahead of this. We need to make certain that the crime, the punishment fits the crime as well. In my district, Donald Trump was an 82% plus winner, right? I could have very easily, in the waning hours of my campaign, come up with a fake ad of Donald Trump shaking my hand and endorsing me, right? He obviously did not endorse me. Actually, he came at me about 6, 7 times. Still won. But that endorsement means something. So, if you flip the script around and with fake endorsements that look very, very real, that's also not right. It's also deceiving voters. And quite frankly, I don't know if a Class A misdemeanor is enough in the waning hours of campaign, the last 72 hours of campaign, if someone comes in with an AI ad that is deceptive in either way, either negatively or positively, and it changes a $10 million race, I don't know if a Class A misdemeanor is enough. And the folks who are willing to do this don't care about a $500 slap on the wrist. And with all due respect, we know how difficult it is to collect $500 these days from the Ethics Commission once y'all are done finding people. We've already established that in the last hearing. So with that, I appreciate, if there's any other questions for the witness, we can move on. But I just wanted to establish what is political speech and make certain that this bill only targets those who are paying for ads and running campaigns in a very deceptive manner.
Ms. Thompson?
May I ask the author of the bill a question? May I ask the author of the bill a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Speaker Phelan, it seems like to me this is a bill that deals with truth in advertisement. Do you have a civil remedy for deceptive trade practice, deceptive acts?
All we have right now is the Class A misdemeanor, and we have DPS here as well as a resource witness as to how we would prosecute that. That is, I believe 2 years and I believe up to $10,000 fine.
But what would be the civil penalties?
I'm open to civil penalties as well.
Okay.
One
Okay.
second. Let the record reflect that Representative Turner and Representative Gann are now present.
Thank
Mr.
you
Smithy.
very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman,
Chairman. Ms. Thompson, I think, makes a good point, is that if you really want to stop this, have a private action where the opponent, like you, in your case, I mean, those pictures are real funny if it's somebody else, but when it's you, it's not all that funny.
Correct.
And, but yeah, you could really stop it with us, because very likely nobody's going to prosecute this. But a civil remedy where your opponent, where you could sue your opponent or whoever ran the ad for civil damages, it seems like that would be the most effective way to stop it.
Excellent. Yeah. Be happy to look at that. Thank you.
Members, further questions? Mr. Raymond?
Thank you, Chairman. To Chairman Smithy's point, could you remind me, I was, at the moment you said that, John, I was trying to remember, there have been moments, and I just don't remember how we get there, after a campaign where I know campaigns have had to pay the opposing candidate some, you remember that? What is that?
Yes, well, there are already in Title 15 a few private causes of action that sort of an opponent in a campaign could pursue for certain
Right,
violations.
give me an
of Title
example.
15.
It's been a while, but I remember there have been a couple of cases where after the election, one candidate had to pay the other candidate, and it wasn't like paying the campaign, it was paying them personally. So do you remember what those circumstances?
Yeah, I
would
mean,
be?
it's in subchapter E, so of Title 15, of Chapter 253, sorry, of the Election Code. And it allows that for a person who knowingly makes or accepts a campaign contribution or makes a campaign expenditure in violation of Chapter 253, they could be civilly liable to the opposing candidate for twice the value of the unlawful contribution or expenditure and reasonable attorney's fees.
Okay, and that's what, and that has happened at least in sort of recent times, because I can remember, I just can't remember which candidates they were. So it kind of builds on what John says. So we kind of have something already in law that we could build on, right? Just that point anyway, that part.
Thank you. Members, further questions for Mr. Ten? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Chair calls David Dixon. Major Dixon, the record shows you as Major David Dixon, and you're representing the Texas Department of Public Safety, and is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you're neutral on the bill.
Yes, sir.
Please proceed. Are there questions for,
Well, he's a resource witness as to the prosecution side of this. If you have any questions for him, otherwise, he was just here for references of how this bill actually be prosecuted.
questions for this witness?
And Mr. Chairman, my understanding would be referred to a local district attorney, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
For prosecution, so that's how it would, as written right now, that's how the criminal act would be prosecuted. Pardon me? Well, I think let's say if a mail piece hit in 4 different counties, you could effectively use any of those 4 district attorneys, correct?
Yes, sir. I would meet with all 4 to see which venue we wanted to go with. It'd probably be where it was sent from, though. I would probably, whatever county it was sent from would probably be the DA that would want to prosecute.
So if it's a P.O. box in Austin, it would be Travis County.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have. That's all I have for the resource witnesses.
Chairman,
Ms. Raymond? Or Ms.
go ahead,
McGuinn?
John.
Would you have jurisdictional, an ability to put it in a jurisdiction where it would actually get prosecuted? Or would it, I mean, does it have to go where it was mailed from, or if it hit in Tarrant County, could it be prosecuted in Tarrant County even if it had a P.O. box in Austin or Philadelphia?
We would have to meet with the Tarrant County DA, or if you're the victim, wherever you're at when you're the victim. So we would have
So
to,
it could be in the victim's county?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Further questions? Ms. Raymond?
That's what I wanted to clarify, because if it came from out of state, then, if the origin, if it originated in Philadelphia, then that would have been a problem. So I think you need to be clear that it could be done where it occurred, or, where it came from.
Again, you'd have to meet with the DA regarding the victim. So you're the victim here in Travis County right now from this scam. So I would meet with the Travis County, even though the violator is in Philadelphia. I'd try to get a charge here in Texas.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Members, further questions of this witness? Thank you, Major. Appreciate you being here. Okay. There is an overflow room that is ready, and room 120, anybody's interested in that. This one? Yeah, okay. Chair calls Renzo Soto. Mr. Soto, the record shows you are you're the executive director of Texas and the South TechNet.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And you're neutral on the bill?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here. Members, are there any questions for this witness?
Well, you've reviewed the bill, and can you speak to the changes that you've recommended?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, first of all, explain what you do and who you represent. I mean, it's a little, it's a little bit more than just a title. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So I do represent TechNet. We represent 96 different member companies across the innovation economy in several fields related to technology, AI being one of them. We appreciate Speaker Feeling for bringing this forward. We're supportive of the goal of this bill. What we are bringing forward are simply belt and suspenders types of amendments, making sure that there's no things such as intermediary liabilities, making sure that prosecution can go after the bad actors who seek to deceive with these ads. And so tightening up the legal standards as well on that end. But other than that, we've got no problems with the bill.
I like the sound of that. We're working on a committee sub, obviously. We don't want to make certain that the entities you represent and some of the biggest social media companies on the planet, correct?
Yes, sir.
We want to make certain that they're not held liable, that the actual candidate or PAC, whoever's generating these ads, paying for these ads, promoting these ads, are the ones that are ultimately responsible. So
Yes, sir.
we're working on that language. We have really 3 small tweaks from you that I appreciate you supporting it once we get those done.
Absolutely. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Members, further questions for the witness? Not? Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you. Okay. Chair calls Grayson Gee. Right. Mr. Gee, the record shows you're a policy analyst, and you're representing the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and you are for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
You have 3 minutes.
Great. Well, I'll just give a few oral remarks. Thank you, Chairman King and distinguished members of this committee. My name is Grayson Gee, and I serve as a technology policy analyst at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 366. I echo many of the comments that were made by the resource witnesses, which this bill addresses the use of artificial intelligence to manipulate media and political advertising by establishing a disclosure requirement to provide clarity to the public when AI is used. Free and fair elections form the bedrock of our constitutional republic. They are the primary mechanism through which citizens exercise their sovereignty and hold their government accountable. When the integrity of election information in the public square is compromised, the very foundation of self-government is threatened. HB 366 addresses one of the most pressing threats to election integrity today, the use of artificial intelligence to create deceptive political content. As technology advances, the barrier to creating convincing fake videos, images, and audio recordings continue to fall. Without proper safeguards, voters may be unable to distinguish between authentic and manipulated content, undermining their ability to make informed decisions at the ballot box. Rather than banning altered media outright, this legislation simply requires disclosure when political advertising contains artificially generated or manipulated content. By requiring transparency rather than prohibition, this bill allows free expression while ensuring voters have the context they need to evaluate political messages. As we've already witnessed in recent elections across the country, several of which were alluded to earlier, AI-generated deepfakes can spread rapidly and cause significant confusion. This bill's simple disclosure requirement creates minimal burden while providing protection to election integrity. When we analyzed this bill at the foundation, we did come across a few questions, though, which do merit additional consideration. Some of which being the introduced version of the bill does not include exemptions for satire. The Texas Public Policy Foundation would support providing clear exemptions for political speech that is satirical, following longstanding legal precedent and the American political tradition. And consistent with other sections in the election code, which this bill amends, we'd like to see the criminal penalties be changed to civil penalties to align with other instances where disclosure is not complied with by a candidate or campaign. We understand that there will be a committee substitute, and we are grateful to Speaker Phelan and his staff for their openness to working with us to address these and other considerations. But to conclude, elections are not merely procedural exercises. They are the manifestation of our commitment to self-governance. When information in the electoral marketplace is manipulated without disclosure, we undermine the very purpose of democratic elections. HB 366 provides a sensible approach to balancing the need for transparency while ensuring that Americans' freedom of expression is protected.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Gee.
consideration.
Member, there are questions for this witness? Mr. Phelan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gee, thank you for being here. Appreciate you and working with my staff and myself on perfecting this bill. No problem with the satire. We've already talked about satire and cartoons and all that stuff that kind of comes through political mail and advertising, and we're working on tightening that up as well. I would just say that if it's satire, if it's funny satire, it should be fine. If it's lame, maybe you should get sued. I mean, at least be good about it, you know? You're part of a think tank, and I'm sure you look at other states, and I've asked the Ethics Commission. I know this is being addressed across the country right now, and again, at the federal level. What have you seen in other states, how they've handled this? What's the good, bad, and the ugly, if you can, if you know that?
You are right to suggest that other states are handling it. I can't speak immediately to that, but I'd be more than happy to get back to you with some analysis on what other states are doing.
And I'm not saying Texas wants to be like other states, but it bears looking at what they've done and what's worked and what has not worked. And we're only in for every other year, so I'm sure someone's already addressed this. So, with that being said, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Thompson.
Do you know what other states may have laws that they implemented like this?
I do not know off the top of my head
Could
at
you give
this
me that
point.
information?
Yes, ma'am. Be more than happy to follow up.
Would your organization be supportive of punitive damages in civil actions?
I will
Would
go
you
back
check
to
on
our
that,
office to check on that and get back with you.
Please,
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Raymond?
Yeah, so, how would you feel, so the point you're making, I think, in your testimony is you're okay with deceptive advertising like this, right? Let's AI generated or whatever, as long as it's clear to the voter or the people receiving the information that it's not real, right? So if, if somebody got a phone call, it said something like, this is Donald J. Trump, Dade Phelan's a great guy, I love him, I think he's the best, maybe the best speaker ever, I'm not sure, something like that. And then said, and then said, I'm just kidding, it's not really Donald J. Trump, but if it were, So then you would be okay with something like that because it's sort of a disclaimer that it's not real?
Well, I think following the long storied American political tradition of satire and political cartoons, as we grow into this new environment of technologically manipulated media, I think what this bill seeks to do, providing transparency and clarity about when those type of things are used, that's appropriate. Speech is fundamental and is protected by the Constitution. And so making sure that the guardrails are sufficient to protect that fundamental liberty while also providing
again,
transparency and clarity.
Right, so you would, and I'm asking because I think it's, we're gonna do it, I wish we would do it as right as possible, right? And so, TPPF, so let's say whoever you consider the most liberal member of the House of Representatives, and I'm sure you consider some members, probably not me, but some members, some Democrats to be very liberal. And so let's say they did some advertising that said, in a very sort of happy way, the TPPF, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, they've always supported me. They're great. I love them because they've supported my campaign. They're supporting my campaign. I'm just kidding. But if they were, I know that if they really looked at my campaign, they'd support me because I'm a great, and the TPPF really likes my record in the House. You'd kind of be okay with that because they're sort of disclaiming that it's not real, but, so you're okay with that?
Well,
and I'm asking because I may have to use that line, next year if I get a general election opponent, I may have to, so.
Well, in that case, I would question if this bill applies because the bill would be specifically related to images that are manipulated to represent something in
Well,
fact,
so you're not gonna
which
make
is
me do my
which
Trump
didn't
again,
happen.
are you? So let's say Trump said.
Please don't.
Let's say Trump said, well, you shouldn't have said that, Chairman. I mean, do you like Trump or not?
I like him better than you at this moment, so please move on. Move on.
So if you had Donald Trump saying the TPPF's a great the TPPF is a great organization, I love, and they're supporting, a liberal candidate number one or whatever, then it's okay. As long as they say, well, it's not really Trump. But, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to get to where.
Yes, sir.
Where we actually do get to where the speaker is trying to get. I know it's threading the needle.
Yeah.
But because to say, satire and all that, I mean, we can satire all day long, man, and, and it'd be really bad for the candidate, be misleading and be bad. I mean, the bill right now as it's written is leaving it up to the Ethics Commission to decide what that disclaimer looks like, right? And so, I guess I would like for you all to think about if you support what he's trying to do here, let's make it meaningful.
Yes,
You
sir.
see what I mean?
Yes, sir. Thank you
All
for that.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Members, are there questions for the witness? Seeing none? Mr. Gee, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chair calls Andrew Cates.
Morning.
Okay. Let the record reflect that Representative Hall is now with us. All right. The record shows you are Andrew Cates. You're representing yourself?
Correct.
And you are for the bill. Is that
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Andrew Cates. I used to be a lobbyist. That may be why I look a little familiar. But after about 14, 15 years, I, thank God, let it go. I'm no longer a lobbyist. I'm really just here because I'm a nerd about this stuff. I'm an expert in campaign finance and lobby law. Wrote a book on it, whatever. So to be honest, I wrote a script last night, but I'm probably just going to shoot from the cuff to answer some of the questions that have been going on. I think I'm mostly here because I showed up to Representative Capriglione's select committee in April about AI and sounded the alarm about a lot of this stuff, especially AI and elections. You know, the feds were mentioned a little while ago. The federal government, the cavalry is not coming. The FCC and the Federal Election Commission are still in a battle over who actually has the authority to regulate AI in elections. And so we are looking at a patchwork across the country of different states. The issue as I see it is that while we have a true source of communication statute in Chapter 55 or 255 of the Election Code, that law as it was passed in 2019, specifically around deepfakes, is already out of date. It doesn't talk about any other types of altered media other than video. And these AI models have gotten a lot more realistic over time, just in the last 5 years. And people being duped by them, those examples are stacking up really fast. HB 366 takes a necessary step, even if it is just a little bit of a small one, towards reining it in. It doesn't criminalize the speech itself, and it doesn't criminalize memes, political memes like that, like Twitter has been saying over the last few days. It literally just adds to the existing requirement to add another disclaimer to say you used AI. That's about it. 19 other states, somebody asked about other states, 19 other states have already passed something like this, and a dozen more are working on it right now during their legislative sessions. Did that go off? Okay. So a lot of big tech companies, Google, Facebook, are kind of already starting to roll out this requirement anyway in paid advertisements on their platform. So it's not that, tough of a pill to swallow. I think it was Representative Raymond asked about the great impression, by the way, about these ads saying, he's the best, whatever. One thing to remember and consider is that this is about political ads for campaigns and not during legislative cycles. So right now you're not technically running for office. You're not campaigning. And so these would be legislative ads. So this wouldn't apply right now. This is about affecting an election. I did also want to mention when the DPS representative was up here asking about going straight to the DA, there was a recent opinion out of the Court of Criminal Appeals called In Re Charette, C-H-A-R-E-T-T-E, and it basically went directly at the Ethics Commission on this. I'm sorry, can I keep going or? Okay.
Mr. Cates, thank you for testimony. I would like you to finish your thought.
Thank you. So this case was directed right at the Ethics Commission, and it was basically saying, from the Court of Criminal Appeals, saying that you have to exhaust your administrative remedies before you go straight to the DA. And so you have to go through the Ethics Commission complaint process first before you can go to a DA. I know that they recently changed up some rules internally so that they can fast track that, but either way, you can't just go straight to a DA. The DA is going to have to accept that complaint and turn around and go right to the Ethics Commission and get essentially permission to prosecute. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the penalty, Class A misdemeanor. One of the things, and I got a lot of heat on Twitter for it myself when I testified in the AI committee, one of the things that I recommended was bumping it up to a felony. Because in my experience with clients, with the stakeholder community, the one thing that everybody remembers is that you cannot give a corporate check to a candidate because it's a felony, because it scares the crap out of people. And if you really want to scare people on this and try to shut this down, in my experience, that's the way to do it. I do know that the guardrails on this are tough because of the First Amendment, but to me, and I said this to members of the Texas Supreme Court recently when I spoke with them, that's their problem. and I don't need to tell you what your job is, but your job is to pass the bill. Their job is to figure out if it's going to survive strict scrutiny in the court system on the First Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Cates.
Yes, sir.
Members, are questions for Mr. Cates? Mr. Anchia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cates, quick question about the exhaustion of administrative remedies. Really two questions. The first one is, can the Ethics Commission waive the administrative process and allow the DA to move quickly? Do they have the ability to do that on their own?
Yeah, so that was, right after the case came out, they passed basically an emergency rule, and they have re-extended it, and I think made it, Jim might be able to tell us for sure, but I think they made it permanent to essentially fast-track that, yeah.
Got it. And that answers my second question as well, which is sometimes a requirement to exhaust one's administrative remedies can cause delays to where, you know, ultimately the relief sought is unhelpful because so much time has passed. So
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was with the Nurses Association for 5 years, so going through that regulatory process of complaints for nurses, I get it in terms of exhaustion of remedies. It takes a long time.
it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, Mr. Darby?
Yes, thank you, Andrew, for your testimony, and thanks to Speaker Phelan for this bill. Clearly, I was victimized, as he was, in this last election process. And to Representative Thompson's concerns and Speaker Phelan's concerns, we need to stop this, and I understand First Amendment. But what are other states doing in addition, perhaps increasing the penalty to a felony? Do we have any sort of civil process injunctive relief, for example, libel, slander?
Well,
I mean, if we want to put some teeth into it, allow the candidate to stop it locally.
Yeah.
I mean, to file a proceeding that will bring the action under the scrutiny of a local court.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
Well-
What are other states doing in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Texas was way ahead of the pack on the deepfake bill that we had. Seeing a kind of a layout of the map of the U.S., in terms of a heat map, Texas is like dark red or whatever it would be as compared to everybody else is almost transparent in terms of what we've got compared to everybody else. And so we jumped out ahead, but then technology caught up, and that's kind of how it always goes. You know, technology usually outpaces regulation anyway. You know, the issue with libel and slander, and I mean, y'all know this, you're all just set to a higher standard overall. It's really, really, really hard to affect any kind of slander, libel, defamation case against a or from a public official on somebody because you're a public official. There's just a higher bar to jump to. So, most people are kind of moving in this direction of requiring at least a disclaimer, if not, outright banning it. But those outright bans are getting popped in the courts for First Amendment because it is tough. I mean, it's, you have to show a compelling government interest and make sure it's narrowly tailored to fit that interest. And I mean, the compelling interest, I think, is pretty obvious. But whether or not it's narrowly tailored, I mean, is really just up to the judge that you get.
Well, thank you for your testimony, and thanks to the speaker for bringing this bill. This is important. Everyone on this dais is an elected official. Every one of us recognizes that we are public. And, but when you start seeing these type of vicious ads that not only attack our credibility, but our families, our children, our community, when these deep fakes are accusing us of lying and betraying the values of our community, and there's no remedy associated with that, I'm angered by that, and I think everybody on this dais is angered by it, and we need to stop it.
Well, and I don't know how you stop this, but, I mean, I don't know the percentages, but, what happens if that person that is deep faking that is on a bot farm in Russia? I mean, how do you stop that?
That's why some sort of civil process to stop the dissemination of that information would be the only real remedy.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to get a pack out of Virginia
Right.
that proliferated our mailboxes and airways over issues that were distorted.
You got to figure out long arm jurisdiction at that point and all kinds of stuff.
But we have to have, and we have to put our heads together to figure out a remedy that allows where this type of disinformation is being proliferated. We have to continue to look for remedies to try to stop it or curb it.
I'm here to help.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Cates,
Yes, sir.
could you mentioned a specific case
Yeah,
a few
so
moments
it's,
ago. Would you be willing to provide the committee with the actual citation of that case?
sure, yeah,
Thank you
I'll send it to
very
you.
much. Remember, there are other questions, Mr. Queenie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. In your opinion, would it be beneficial to get in the weeds to specify a font size on this disclosure for printed media, where we're really getting in the, would that be beneficial in your opinion?
Not in statute, probably. I think the Ethics Commission can knock that out pretty easily. From what I remember, there's not a specific font size in federal law in the CFRs. That's directed by the FEC. So I'd say leave it to rule, honestly.
Thanks. Thank you. Members, other questions? Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Case, couple questions. We talked a little bit about, we talked a lot about AI deepfakes this morning. The way the bill is written, it would, to my reading, it seems like it would also apply to kind of pre-AI
Photoshop. Yeah.
embellishment, Photoshop, stuff like that. Is that your reading of it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then the discussion about satire, and I think that's an important point. How do you get around someone does a deep fake or a Photoshop or whatever, alters an image, recording, the defense is, well, it's just satire. This is,
That,
I wasn't being malicious, I was just satirical.
yeah, I mean, I heard that earlier, and I'm certainly empathetic to the desire to add stuff like that in, because, I mean, satire, false speech, anonymous speech, anything like that related to politics has all been protected by the courts over the years. So I'm empathetic to it, but, I mean, like I said, I would probably just leave it to the courts. I would leave the satire out, because the more you put in there, the more loopholes you create, and people are going to exploit them.
All right, thank you.
Members? Mr. Fegan?
I'll just add, and thank you, by the way, for being here. Appreciate you working with our office on this, and clearly an expert in the field, and I look forward to a future conversation with you. Regarding the satire, I will say there was one mailer that was sent out on Christmas Eve in my campaign saying that I was canceling Christmas in favor of Ramadan, using my face, my campaign logo. I got phone calls from, my friendly, devout Catholic friends that I've grown up with my entire life, wondering what's going on with Christmas. After I got my MasterCard bill, kind of wish we did cancel Christmas, to be honest with you. But being said, they were kind enough to put "This is satire" in probably 2-point font
Yeah.
on the very last page. Even with my glasses, I couldn't read.
Yeah.
So, I want to work with the Ethics Commission. What Mr. McQueenie said is right on. It can't be so small and innocuous that no one sees it until the damage has been done. I'm fine with stamping in 72-inch font across the front of it, fake news, on everything they put out. But I know that's probably not realistic with the Ethics Commission. So we'll have to work with the agency on that. But yes, I mean, slapping "This is satire" on the very bottom doesn't do much if no one can read it.
Agreed.
That's all I have.
Members, further questions for this witness? Seeing none? Thank you, Mr. Cates.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 366? Hearing none, Chair recognizes Speaker Phelan to close on House Bill 366.
I appreciate Mr. Chairman and members of the committee and the general public here today. This is something that's a work in progress. Again, I don't think anyone in this room is an expert on AI. It changes probably as we speak, but it is the new frontier. It's obviously a new frontier in politics. I will say, in some of the ads that I experienced over the last 2 years, my wife said, "You've never looked better in these ads." Like, somehow they made your forehead a little bit smaller in this ad, and you look pretty good. But even that is fake. and that, maybe we'll never do a photo shoot again as an elected official, which I hate. I mean, I'll be honest, I had to put on makeup to do my last photo shoot. Who likes doing that? Don't answer that, but it's not me. But I may never have to do it again because I can just generate it AI. It can just be fake, and that's still not right. You're still misleading the public. It's not you. And even if the ads are positive, I think the public needs to know that these are computer-generated images and not anything that happened in reality. And so we need to draw a distinct line in the sand and make certain whatever we pass here meets court muster. So again, we'll bring this bill back as a committee substitute, working with stakeholders, and hopefully get something on the House floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. If there's, if there's no objection, House Bill 366 will be left pending at this time. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 366 is left pending.